Ravenclaw and Amit in particular were done dirty in Hogwarts Legacy, and I will go in depth on why and how things could have been different in this video. Because we found a lot of evidence that this wasn't always the case, so let's discuss all that and more. A like on the video would really help us out, subscribe for way more Hogwarts Legacy videos, and let's go. So while they do have the coolest entrance to their common room, it still feels like Ravenclaw is the least fleshed out house of the bunch. It's already apparent in the house exclusive questline that you play before you meet the ghost of Richard Jackdaw. The other houses get to do cool stuff or meet interesting characters, like going to Azkaban as a Hufflepuff or meeting with nearly headless Nick for Gryffindors. But meanwhile, the Ravenclaw house exclusive quest has you collecting bird statues in the Owlery. So yeah, I hope all you Ravenclaws out there get some love soon, hopefully in a DLC with a major character from that house or something. But of course, the biggest letdown for Ravenclaws is the fact that it is the only house that does not have a companion with their own questline. Now, we kind of suspected this would happen, as even before launch we already got some warning signs that Ravenclaw wouldn't get their own companion. In the state of play that first mentioned your companions, we only got to see Natty, who's from Gryffindor, Sebastian, who's from Slytherin, and Poppy, who's a Hufflepuff. But then on November 18th we got our first look at a new character, Amit Thakkar, and there was a lot of excitement because it was a Ravenclaw. Now obviously we look at this in hindsight knowing Amit is not a fully fledged companion, but that was different back then. The only other characters that received a similar treatment, so with a detailed image of the character, their name, and a bit of backstory as well, were, you've guessed it, Poppy, Natty, and Sebastian. So why then is Amit the only other character that also received one of these posts? Well, I think that at one point he might have been planned to be a companion, and there is actually a lot of evidence to support this. A big clue for Amit as a companion requires us to use some mods on PC, specifically the companion mod. This allows you to travel around with different characters, but some of them, including Amit, will have unused dialogue that triggers during certain quests or events. The amount of unused lines Amit has in the open world is actually on par with that of our three main companions. He responds to certain quest steps, like following flying candles into the Forbidden Forest, and his response here even shows he's kind of scared, which fits his character as well.
Are we sure we need to go all the way into the Forbidden Forest? Even if we do have a candlelit path?
He'll also help you out with treasure hunts, comments when you get on your broom, so at one point he was clearly treated as a fully fledged companion that could explore the open world with you. We tried many possible companions with this mod, but only a few, including the main game companions, have these lines, making it extra noteworthy that Amit has unique dialogue too. Jordan, by the way, discussed this feature and other interesting cut content that might return in the future in a previous video that I will link in the video description. But when it comes to Amit, I think there's even more that was cut. In fact, I think there might have been an entire questline for Amit in the game at one point, and I even have an idea on what it would have looked like. Stick with me on this one and tell me what your take is by the end of it, because I think I might be onto something here. The short version is that I think that the final part of Poppy's questline was originally intended to be Amit's quest. One of the reasons is that when you look at the other companion questlines, Poppy's is a bit different. With Sebastian and Natty, the problem and the main villain are immediately clear, and these stay present until our final confrontation with them at the end of the story. But Poppy's questline feels a bit weird in that regard. She's fighting against the poachers, but there is no central antagonist who she has a gripe against. And the main theme is saving magical beasts, and in particular the Hebridean Black Dragon that you set free during the Fire and Vice quest. But after that, the quest makes what feels like a pretty sudden shift. We solve the dragon problem about halfway through the story, and then we get a new objective which leads us to the centaurs in the Forbidden Forest. And this is where I think Amit would have come in. The thing is, centaurs are known to be very good at astronomy, which is Amit's passion in life. He even mentions that the astronomy tables he introduces you to were originally marked by centaurs for ritual stargazing. So while it certainly makes sense for Poppy to go and visit them, I'd argue that it makes even more sense for Amit. And then you start to add in little things like the fact that you need to find a moonstone for this quest, which by the way is called a Scholar's Moonstone, in order to observe a mooncalf dance, and that the puzzle to enter the final dungeon involves a sun and the moon as well. Like, if it wasn't for the fact that we're there to save Snidgets, this quest certainly could have been centered around Amit as well. The only big question that remains for me is what his main problem and villain would have been, but I don't think we'll get an answer to that, although maybe it could happen in a DLC. Now, this is of course all heavy speculation. Could be that none of this is true, but I still thought it was interesting and wanted to bring it up. I'm also curious to hear your thoughts in the comments, so let me know what you think. Even still, there's a lot still currently in the game that really makes Amit seem more similar to our other companions than anything else. We meet some students like Everett or Leander during our classes and have short interactions with them, but there are very few that actually join us on a main quest, let alone more than once. The exceptions to this rule, and I'm starting to sound like a broken record, are our 3 main companions and Amit. Each of the companions also introduces you to a new activity. For Natty, it's Summoner's Court, for Poppy it's Beast Care, for Sebastian it's the Crossed Ones Dueling Club, and while not technically a companion, Amit introduces us to the astronomy tables. During this quest, it also becomes clear that, although he is a bit afraid, Amit really wants to explore the world and learn more about it for his research. So even from his character's point of view, it would make perfect sense for him to go out and explore with us. And well, he kind of does this in the second main quest that features him as a companion, where his ability to read gobbledygook, the native language of goblins, proves very valuable to us. Considering how much of the plot revolves around goblins, I'm surprised this does not come up more often. It's another connection that ties Amit to the main story and the main enemy factions, which is another one of the things he has in common with our main companions. Natty is chasing down the Ashwinders, Sebastian's research into dark magic helps us learn more about Isadora Morganach, and Poppy's quest is heavily focused on the poachers. So apart from creatures like spiders that do have their own pretty cool dedicated side quests, the only enemy faction that does not have a student who is in some way interested in them is the Goblin faction. Amit would have filled that role perfectly, but unfortunately that one visit into the Goblin mines is all we get. And yes, I know that Amit says he's had enough adventure for a lifetime at the end of the quest, but Ominous also repeatedly says he's done with dark magic, only to show up right on time for the next quest. So I don't believe this would have been the end of his storyline had he been a proper companion. And again, we do know a lot of content has been cut or changed, like Jordan mentioned in that previous video, but we can also see it in the very first trailer that was released for the game. There are some familiar scenes here for sure, like Jackdall's Rest or Horntail Hall, but we also see scenes that are completely changed. Like here, where we can see Natty reaching out to pat the Grabhorn in a scene that looks very similar to our first encounter with this magical beast. So I think this shows that some story elements have definitely been swapped between the different characters. Considering his unused voice lines and his screen time and ties to the main story, I think it's clear that there was more planned for Amit at one point. So at the end of the day, it seems like it's him who was done dirty, and more broadly Ravenclaws in general. Because I think there were actually multiple Ravenclaw companions in the works. Going back to that companion mod I mentioned earlier, Everett Clopton, another Ravenclaw, also has dialogue as you explore the open world with him. Which is a bit strange considering that he really only joins you for a flight around Hogwarts and a small conversation in the common room if you are sorted into Ravenclaw. But these are clues that he, like Amit, was considered to be a companion at one point. And I think the choice to make Amit the standout Ravenclaw companion is because Everett would likely have fulfilled a similar role as Sebastian. He too likes breaking rules and is admittedly a bit too confident in his own abilities, whereas Amit's curious but scared personality is something we didn't really have yet. But the main bother is of course that if we're going by cut voice lines, we can deduce that somehow Ravenclaw students went from getting 2 possible companions to 0. Again, curious to hear your thoughts in the comments, and if you want to learn more about some of the cut content that might return in later updates or DLC, you can check out our video on that by clicking on the screen. Remember to subscribe to the channel to not miss any of our Hogwarts Legacy videos, and leave a like on this one if you enjoyed it. I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.